Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Mardock Scramble, the novel. Now, Mardock Scramble is a trilogy of science fiction novels written by Ubukata, who many people will know from various anime productions that he's worked as a writer on. I think Fafner and the second season of Psycho-Pass are the most famous things he's done. Originally released as a trilogy, as I mentioned, Viz in their Haikosoru branch has put them all into one fat book. So the entire Mardock Scramble saga is all in these pages. Most of you have probably heard of Mardock Scramble, mainly from the anime films that they've created recently, animated by Studio Gohans. And they've been pretty well received in general. There's a specific aspect to them that many people don't like, and I will touch on that in a moment in the story, but in general they've been pretty well received, and I've had an interest in picking them up, and even though they're available in the UK and Ireland, they're pretty pricey. What I mean by that is they're pretty short, each one I think is a little over 60 minutes, something like that, and no extras. So I was kind of wondering to myself, how else will I get the Mardock Scramble experience I want to know about this series? So I took a look online and I saw that it was based on a trilogy of novels, and I found that it was in English, and I thought, why not? So I picked it up, and now I'm going to do a review of it. So let's start off with the story. Now, it opens up introducing us to this girl called Rune Balot, or lead character, and Rune Balot has had a very unfortunate life. Really, it would probably go into a bit of spoiler territory if I explain how badly off she is. But suffice to say that she's in some, sex services at the age of 15 already, and that's actually, not nearly as bad as many other aspects in her life. So she's had a very horrible life. Let's just put it at that. And right now she's in the employ of Shell, who works for this large corporation called October Corps. Now, the story opens up with Shell actually attempting to kill her, and in some interpretations, I guess you could say he succeeded. Now, this other group, contacts the government and passes this life preservation program so that they can actually keep Rune alive. And Rune is basically now reliant on gathering evidence against Shell and October Corps in order to get justice, basically. Now, while all this is happening, Shell has hired this kind of hitman guy, Boiled, who is an ex-military man, and his duties are to prevent the group from getting any evidence against Shell or October Corps, and also, to kill him. And that's how the story opens up. Now, I better point out now about that point that many people don't like in Mardock Scramble. So, I just need to quickly explain something. The first novel is basically an action series, and many people have actually, called it, a kind of a more modern Ghost in the Shell. Now, it isn't quite as thought-provoking as that. It's very actiony, all right. I guess that is a fair enough comparison. It's very cyberpunk. However, in some senses that can be seen as a bit of a deception, since the majority of the second book and a large portion of the third book are about gambling. Basically, they go to a casino and they have to win these certain chips, and they have to play these games, and they go through the games in rigorous detail. Like the three games I believe are poker, roulette, and blackjack. And I'm sure that there are many people out there who have no interest in hearing about the characters playing gambling games all the time, and they just want more action. But to be 100% honest, I actually found the gambling portions to be very engaging. The only way that I could actually personally see it not being engaging is that it goes through the rules in rigorous detail, and if you're already familiar with the rules, I could imagine that being very boring. But personally, I think the drama works really well with the gambling. I found it to be, a very interesting battle per se, since it's more of a battle of the mind rather than a battle of, you know, the physical, just as it was in the first book and, you know, near the end of the third book. But I can imagine that it might be a bit confusing in the anime, so I don't know how it was handled in the anime. But suffice to say that I would say the majority of this book is gambling. And then, you know, there is a lot of action in it as well, you know, at the first book and third part. I guess that's a very important thing to point out. And then just quickly point out the ending. The ending wasn't quite as conclusive as I would have liked. You know, I think there could have been just a little bit more details explained near the end. But overall, I thought it wrapped up pretty well. I was quite satisfied with the ending. Now, about the characters. There are 5 main characters in this series. Now, let's start off with Rune Ballot. Rune Ballot, as I said, has had a horrible, horrible life. And, you know, it's amazing that at this point she's still sane. Or sane to an extent, alright. But I found her to be a very engaging character. You know, she's constantly kind of examining her femininity, while at the same time, you know, taking on these various jobs in order to get, you know, the evidence required for, you know, the court cases. And, you know, there's all these kind of training sequences, one for action and then one for, you know, the whole gambling thing. And overall, I really liked her. I found her a charming character, very interesting, very in-depth. And overall, yeah, I guess that's the best thing to point out with her. I like her. Now, the next character is Ubukata, and besides Rune Ballot, I'd say most people, when they image Mardock Scramble, image Ubukata. He's an odd little thing. He's basically a device that takes on, in general, the form of a golden hamster. And he is, you know, he's sentient. He is able to communicate with people, but he's also able to transform into various devices. Basically, quite often, he's this kind of a choker around Ballot, which she's able to talk through because, you know, she lost her vocal cords, so, you know, she's unable to speak. So she speaks through that. But, you know, overall, Ubukata has a really interesting past, discussing the whole, his whole usability, his whole point to existence, etc., etc. So I really liked him. And the majority of the character development in this series comes from both Rune Ballot and Ubukata. Now, the other part of the group that's helping, you know, Rune Ballot and Ubukata is Dr. Easter. And Dr. Easter, you know, he's a scientist. He's developed a lot of the technology that they end up using. He's also quite a pro gambler. He isn't as well developed as you know, Rune Ballot or Ubukata, but you know, he's a very charming character. We get to find out a little bit about his past, not too much, but we do get a bit of information. And you know, he's very supportive, but also very strict. You know, to Rune, you know, as she goes through all these, you know, various challenges. So, you know, not as well developed, but still a very likable character. Now, of the lead 5 characters, this is my least favorite now. This is Shell. When coming into this story with Shell, I was expecting him to be, you know, a very engaging villain, just simply from the first, you know, chapter. But it turns out he's very mentally unstable, and that's because of the fact that he's constantly getting these aspects of his memories removed from him. You know, he can't give any information to the authorities accidentally, or, you know, incriminate himself or something like that. So, because of that, it's making him mentally unstable. And in fact, quite often in the book, he's just a kind of a whiny, panicky guy. And, you know, I found that kind of disappointing. Now, we do get some explanations later as to why he's so unhinged. But even so, you know, I was expecting a bit more from him, and overall, I thought he could have been handled a lot better. Now, final main character would be Boiled, or Dimmesdale Boiled. He is an ex-military man. You know, there's been this conflict, you know, that's happened recently, and he's a veteran from it. A tragedy happened, actually, that he was involved with, and because of that, he was put through some experiments, and, you know, it's caused him, again, to become a bit more unhinged, just like Shell. But unlike Shell, he's actually very cool, very, you know, calm and collected. We understand why what his motives are. And overall, I really like the character development in his part, and I found him to be a much more engaging, you know, antagonist than Shell. So in general, with the characters, I really like the characters in general. I thought Shell could have been handled better, but in general, yeah, the characters are pretty good. Now, of course, we have a variety of other, more minor characters, and in general, they're very good. There are, one or two that are hit or miss, but in general, I would say the cast of Mardock Scramble is, a very good one, and, a very enjoyable group. Now, when I say enjoyable, there are some that are, good, well-developed characters, but a bit disturbing. Now, I guess that's where I should point out a couple of things. This novel is violent, but that isn't disturbing at all. What's more disturbing is there is a lot of sexual content in this book. So if you're uncomfortable with, incest, rape, sexual violence of some kind, then you're probably not going to want to read this book. I just better point that out before I forget. The writing style of Tao now. The writing style is very strong, actually. I really liked his writing style. Because of the fact that it's a science fiction novel, there's a lot of technologies that need to be explained. But I found Tao's, description of the majority of them to be very satisfying and very intriguing, to see how these various devices will be used in the context of the story. So I really like his writing style. Also, I like the way that he, writes the characters, the way that they play off each other. So in general, I really like his writing style. There are some moments where, the writing can be a bit stiff. I don't know if it's the translation or not. Maybe it could be the translation. It's translated by Edwin Hawkes. I'm not familiar with other works he's translated. But there is a bit of a stiffness every so often. And but I didn't let that get in my way. So overall, I really like Tao's writing style. Something else I should point out is, before I start talking about Viz's treatment of this, is the fact that I've heard that this is a light novels, and I would disagree, with the definition of it being a light novel. I'll just give a bit of an explanation there. So there are about 3 reasons as to why I wouldn't class this as a light novel. One is that there are no pictures throughout. Unlike in various other light novels, Vampire Hunter D, Haru Suzumiya, Spice Wolf, etc., there are no pictures spread throughout. So in that regard, it's a much more conventional, read, much more like Western novels. Another thing, many light novels aren't overly descriptive. They give a bit of description, but they're always kind of progressing on, relatively quickly. This gives a lot of description, of the characters, of the technologies, of the environments, etc., of the gambling. So, far more descriptive. And then, of course, light novels are generally light in tone and, not overly deep. But I remember there was this one chapter in Mardock Scramble which was entirely, philosophy. It was like one of the villains talking to a scientist, and it was all discussing philosophy, and I was like overwhelmed by it. I had to put the book down afterwards, and I was like, oh, okay, I need to take a break for a while. So, not a light read, I will say. You will need to concentrate on this. So, based on all those factors, I wouldn't count this as a light novel. But, some people do, so whatever. Now, Viz's treatment of it, as you can tell, all 3 novels are in one, so it is over 750 pages. It's quite the hefty book. It's published under Viz's Haikosoru branch, which publish science fiction novels in English. And in general, the paper quality is very nice. Overall, Viz has done a pretty good job on this, and it's well priced to boot. So overall, would I recommend Mardock Scramble? I definitely would. I very much enjoyed it. It is by no means a flawless work or a masterpiece, but it is a very engaging read. Just keep in mind that if you're more into action novels and you might possibly be disappointed by the dominance of gambling later in this novel, then yeah, you might want to steer clear of this. But if you're just simply into a science fiction setting with some very interesting technology, some strong characters, and an engaging dramatic story, then I would highly recommend that you pick up Mardock Scramble. So yeah, that's my review of Mardock Scramble. Hopefully you enjoyed it, hopefully you found it informative. If you have seen the anime films or read the manga or read the novel, I would like to hear your opinions below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.